Welcome back to the Construction CPA Podcast. Today we are being joined by Tony DeLozier, and he is a safety manager and expert. And what you'll find from today's conversation is how much he loves the industry and how much he really loves the space, and how knowledgeable he is, and just the influence that he'll have in being able to make some change. So, without further ado, Tony, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Uh, Hi, thanks again for having me. Actually pretty excited about to share some of the passion I have for this industry. Um, yeah, I started out in the Army after high school. I didn't really know what to get into. I had a fairly successful career, and then when I got out, I worked for my family shop for a little bit, and they kind of broke me out into the safety world. And a friend of mine got me into the industry of power lines and haven't looked back. The big thing that what I remember from the military is showing up right place, right time, right uniform. And the big thing for me as an NCO in the Army was to be the example, know the rules, and then do the right thing whenever possible. So we took those principles with the team that I've worked with for the past few years and kind of started growing and developing into that. And then when coming into the civilian world was way different than I'd ever experienced. Like being a safety for oil and gas industry power lines was not something I don't think anything can really get you ready for. You just kind of fall into it, and it's its own micro culture within the area that I live. We always used to say, everything deals with the oil field whether they want to or not, and it's kind of like that's been what kind of drove me. It's like, okay, and very heavy compliance based and stuff, and doing things a certain way, and then we got kind of developed into like, we used terminologies but didn't know how to change it, and they really helped me shave off a lot of rough edges, and I'm still a work in progress. If I knew everything about this industry, I'd have to find something else. Um,
No,
yeah.
I get that. I get that completely. Never stop learning. What was the biggest shock for you from the military going into, well, becoming a civilian, if you will?
Uh, so in the military, it's a definite. If you don't do right, there are consequences. The cause and effect are a very real thing. I went into the military in a time in 2002 or 2003, and yeah, it just there's life or death consequences to it. And then coming out, they're the same consequences, but they're not as frequent. Like the threat is there, but it's mitigated to like just it's not important. That won't happen to me. And so some of the procedures, policies that are written, and people like to say the standards are written in blood. No, the standards were written because they've been ignored, and we had to put something in black and white to be able to build some type of accountability on this side of it. It's the transitions, people weren't broken down to their bare essentials and then built back up to actually do what to follow the rules, follow procedures, and get involved in that manner. Like taking it home with them. Everything they do is judged on, and everything you have to evaluate. And that's been the biggest shock for me. Is just my last time in overseas out of my 5 tours was with 21 people, and we worked harmoniously as an organization to train and develop an A&A howitzer battery, and pushed it further than anyone else did in our region. There were people already more developed, but for us that was huge. And I had that was one of the points that I look back on is like, and I didn't have really anything to do with that. I just enabled the NCOs that I worked with to do what they do best. Like they were picked for the mission because they were the best at what they were doing, and they said, "Here's your team." We had, I want to say, 2 months to prep for it. I got to send some of them to Germany to train up for it, and then we left, and they performed phenomenally. Came back. Then I transitioned out. It's like, hey, these are your areas to cover. Go out there, tell me what you're seeing, do some audits, some compliance audits and stuff, kind of find some indicators and improve it. And the improving part was hard. Like, you have to get that buy-in, you have to sell it. Like, I don't know how to sell somebody's personal safety, or how to sell their risk reduction, or to change their mindset about those things, because in the military it's like, do as you're told. And so that the sell point of it, and having them to really interact with it, like taking it home and actually caring for themselves a lot more and caring for each other. And then the monotony, just doing that is the day in, day out similar task. And there's no breaks, there's no end of tour. So it's life. You're living it every day. So whatever you do, like, there may be a goal, but there's no end or timeline to get there. We always knew there's the end of a deployment. There's a next mission to train for. You don't have that in the civilian world. You may have your personal goals, but it may not align with the organizations where they actually have you developed, if they have a development plan for you. And then always just pushing on the needle, where, like, we've always done it this way. The military is like, no, we're going to consistently innovate and push on the forefront of some of these things. A lot of the greatest changes in socially, safety-wise, actually started out with the military, and fully integration and everything. So that was a big shock coming from the military. Long-winded
Yeah,
answer on that one. I'm sorry.
no, that was a really good answer, and pretty insightful. So how do you get buy-in in a situation where the person doesn't actually naturally want to do the things that are right, want to follow the policies and the procedures? They don't even necessarily think that they're relevant, or that how do you get the buy-in, since you're not built that way?
Well, it's not singular effort. I'm pretty famous for saying a lot of useless information. The biggest one I can say is, like, I really have very little to do with safety, and I'm not the smartest guy in the room about the safety procedures that I'm supposed to be teaching, but I can organize a group of people into where I can play upon their strengths. We did a manhole rescue for a group, and then I had a 30-year veteran from the trade that used to train on it annually to ensure that all of his people were confident in their abilities to do it in case of real life incidents. And with the world they came from, the safety taught it. And I was like, well, I can teach it, but it's all going to be regulation based, not from like what you guys have actually done. And he's like, okay, so you just want me to cover the standards, this? And I was like, no, I want you to teach it like you're teaching it to your guys, like your life depends on it, because you're going into the manhole and they may have to rescue you. And he's like, well, like inspection of the stuff and stuff like that. And I was like, well, yeah, definitely talk about inspecting it. That's important, but I'd rather spend more time with the hands-on piece. We're dealing with the trade, and that's another thing. It's understanding their mentality about it. Is like, they didn't go to college to do the academic stuff. They worked out to where they could work with their hands. There is some reading involved, and there is some learning curves, but it's to be applied with hands-on, turning wrenches, tying in wire, setting pad mount transformers and stuff. So you give them a platform to talk about their trade, and then you actually care. Like, I need to know those things, because if something goes wrong, I need to be able to explain those technical terms and those nicknames for all those components to people that only know the units, the pricing, and how it looks on a spreadsheet when they order it for a major project, or what work points we're supposed to have, what items on it. And it's been a combination of help. And then one of the things that I was told when I first got into this industry, the only reason I actually got a chance in the power line industry, and I still thank her for this day, is I was asked, why do you want to do safety? And I was like, well, I was a platoon sergeant in the Army. I just genuinely care about people. And you have to generally care about people. And then the other part is, like, you have to show up. And it sounds a little bit cliche, but you have to be there early in the morning. Sometimes you have to be the last one to leave. You have to be out there on site, and you have to realize that you're going to come up with some really good ideas until you ask someone else, like, what do you think about this? That was a big hit to my ego. I'm not going to lie, but when I started to ask him, I was like, well, if I did this, would you guys use it? Well, no, that didn't make any sense. Well, we need just this one blanket form for this. And like, well, describe it more in depth. And then I take the technical stuff and the blanket form that they're talking about, and I was like, we have stuff that exists already. They're familiar with it. How do I make that work for them? And then I let them test it, and they're like, oh, yeah, that's good. Or, well, I would like it in this order. So it makes sense to the way they're working out on the job site. The end user ability to access, and then interact with whatever policy, procedure, or form that you're using was a big thing. And making it about them, like, it's really, the benefit to me is secondary. It's easier to pull the information that I need in the bad times, like when an incident happens, an accident happens, and just making them understand is like, well, I have to get better. We have to get better as an organization, and you're the key piece to that, because you are the base of the organization. You're not at the bottom of the pole, but the foundation that sits on every penny generated comes from what you do, not what I do. I was like, I'm here to save as many pennies to the top. And then also some of that is the return of investment. And for them, you lose them in that terminology because they're thinking, oh, well, now he's a bean counter. No, that's not it. It's just like, if we spend the money on the training, the tools to treat you like Class A linemen, Class A operators, Class A, really develop our general foreman, our leadership schools and stuff, then you will start acting accordingly, because it'll become normal. You'll buy into the program, and getting that mid-level, that field supervision leadership was key. And then I told him, I was like, you don't need a safety guy. It's like, right from wrong. If you look at cultural, it is management buy-in, if they're bought into it, and then supervision led, your field, your foreman, general foreman, superintendent, if they're kind of leading the charge on it and encouraging, and then innovating and helping you with the problem solution, and then your employee involvement, it's going to spread. The things I do today won't be recognized today. It'll come a few years from now, and that's how we actually sold it. It's to make it a better industry across the board. And some of the stuff don't make sense, and if it doesn't, let us know so we can see where we can make what you're saying line up with what the organization needs.
Got it. So it sounds like you're saying not to build a safety policy or program from the top down, but to actually include the people that it directly affects in the decision making and in the policy making.
Yeah,
and implementation.
100%. And some of the stuff they will bring from years of experience. I have linemen that have been doing this 30 years from a ground hand on up. It's like the big thing, especially in your metropolitan areas, with anytime you break the soil, is ground disturbance. And everybody's like, well, we have our one call and it was clear, but we still hit something. You're going to hit things because you don't understand the 811 stuff. It's that's only Class A utilities have to participate in it, the things that you pay for. So it's just breaking that down for them. Now we have now the general foreman are after incident investigations and stuff, they're like, well, we have the spot for pre-excavation pictures, no one's utilizing it. And I was like, yeah, that was one of the things you guys requested, is we've sent you the information on how to upload and do this stuff. If you guys want to use it, it's there for you. If not, no, we're not forcing it, because if it's forced buy-in, then it'll fall off. But if they see the advantages to it, and oh, well, this actually covers us. This proves that markings weren't there. And so that's been a big driving force in it. And it's been common stuff. It's just we don't want to be the hammer on it. We have to coach and mentor, because that's what my director and good friends is that that's the safety for generations. It's going to keep, that is going to keep passed on to the next ones. Like, oh, I remember this one time we're doing this pole. We knew there were lines there. And then we got the all clear from the city, from the utilities, from the water, and then we still hit a line. But we had this JHA that made us put in this picture of pre-excavation. That's what they pulled, and it actually cleared us of actually any wrongdoing on that one and covered us. And that, you know, it saves hundreds of thousands of dollars in damages. And then it also, it saves the stress on that crew. It saves the stress on the project and management.
Got it. You mentioned something earlier. You said that the things that you do today are, you're not like, they won't necessarily see the benefits until years to come, or at least down the line. How can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Uh, so everything that I know about this industry, and I have to give credit back to the trade, is something I've learned from linemen, electricians, operators, truck drivers. Is everything that they've said to me is like, I remember it and I take it and I try to, like, this is coming from a guy that I'm teaching, and it said that, well, you don't understand what I do. And I was like, well, help me understand it. And sometimes I get lucky and I don't get the response, well, that's not my job. And I was like, okay, move on to the next one that wants to help with this one. But I take that and like, okay, so how do I make you understand that in a classroom, or how do I make you understand in policy, or how do I make you understand that just in passing conversations when I'm coaching and mentoring? So with that approach, is I've taken what an old lineman told me. He's like, 20 years ago, we didn't use safeties when we climbed poles. We got up a pole and we wrapped a rope, wrapped our leather strap around it, and we went up and got after it. And now, if you ask me to do that today, I would do that. If you ask one of these younger linemen, they'll still do it, but only because there's an older lineman there that, talked about it. But there's some affirmation in the back of their minds, like, I'm supposed to have this safety that's in between us, so if I slip and fall, it catches me. And the cultural change, like, that took 20 years for that mindset to really grab hold in the industry. And it was either done through, when I first started, used to say serious event, public outcry, or life-changing event. If you're the life-changing event where you slid down the pole, I wish I would have had something there to catch me. Public outcry is watching, is your significant other, your family, saying that does not look very smart. And then, just the, hey, you will use this now if you want to be part of this organization, if you want to climb utility poles. So the biggest one has just been the life-changing events, and then how to make them feel it. And if they see other linemen using it, they'll just kind of like, okay, it's better. Let me just go with this. And that's.
Yeah, I wonder if there's a way.
I'm sorry.
To simulate that without having, like a life-changing event actually occurring, but having them be able to experience that, at least emotionally, so that is there a way to speed up that process of culture change?
Oh, on the contractor side, maybe, but the big thing is just going to be like what I've told people is the method is play on their egos. Linemen, every one of us has an ego to a certain extent. I hate to say this, but sometimes I feel like I know what I'm trying to say. I know it's right, but I know it's not in the correct manner. And but my ego gets hurt whenever somebody calls me out on it, because I'm guilty of it. And that's pointing out that fault is like what makes us all human. But like playing their ego is like, it's like, you've been doing this how many years? This is like, are you supposed to do that? Well, no. Well, why are you doing it then? It's like, more so, why would you do it in front of me? Like, as far as like, I'm the safety manager of this thing. I'm trying to drive this program and develop it to make it better for everyone that uses it. And here you are throwing it out the window. I was like, this isn't something I'm driving. I'm taking the information you're giving me and developing something that are moving on to the next one. It's like, all right, this one's taken care of. Let's move on to the next one. I was like, you're setting me back like a month here. I had to figure out how to make this not okay to you. And I was like, the 5 other things that I had planned to do was like, they're out the window. It's like, we got to focus. This is a serious issue because of the possible impact of it and the progression of it. And I think that's helping out a lot. And again, I go work with general foremen, superintendents, and division managers and VPs. I don't work with all necessarily the foreman, because if he's allowing those actions already exist on his crew and doesn't see the dangers, we say hazards or however you want to label it, but if he doesn't see anything wrong with it, then I'm not going to get the consistency buy-in from him. I have to go a level higher. And it's not tattletelling, but it's trying to affect that next generation, because that general foreman has seen something. He knows why these rules are developed the way they are. One big thing that really pushes is the accountability. It's like, if you don't have any accountability in your culture, not just safety culture, because it's all encompassing, you will not affect any change. You'll just keep reliving the same nightmare.
Okay. And in line with that, then how do you balance managing accountability, but still making people feel, I guess, valued and that they have their own autonomy at the same time?
That is a excellent question, and I don't hold any accountability to anybody that doesn't report to me. I didn't hire any of these crews. I facilitate meetings. I facilitate corrective actions, and put together safety flashes and things like that from the events that they tell us is to balance that out would have to come from an operational standpoint of how you can develop this, and then putting that list out there. And it's all everything's situationally based, is the severity, the performance of the crew, the participation into the programs that are out there to make it better. If they're not doing that and they mess up and they're not participating in these programs, is like, that's your coaching moment to kind of, hey, listen, if we start doing these things, you start pointing it out, I was like, watch, your crew will turn around. And that kind of cliche is to say, but there's data out there to prove it. But if they're not participating in like safe observations, auditing themselves, or utilizing the tools that are out there, then you give them a coaching moment. Then it steps up to mentoring. That's where you're on location with them and actually kind of like getting inside their head. And this doesn't come from me. I gather data for people and then kind of bring it back, and this is what I've seen. And then the last one is some type of corrective measure where holding them accountable for not doing whatever you're asking them to change. And then if not, then, being terminated from a position is an actual coaching and mentoring moment, is that maybe you have to get humbled, because in my industry, it's changed in the last year, but a lineman can get fired from one job and get picked up the next day. That's the reason a lot of the linemen left and went into training, because they're like, if we lay a strong enough foundation for them, that'll stop in 4 years from now. So that's the big thing, is like balancing that out really won't come from my perspective of it. I have ideas about it, but I'm not driving the culture. That's always going to be an operational thing. If safety's dishing out tickets and issuing punishments over things, then they don't have that safe place to go to. And it can't be their general foreman, the one that hired them, that's supposed to be holding them accountable, and that actually are technical experts in what they're doing. It's coming from a guy that may or may not have done the trade, but knows a lot of rules and regulations. So and your safety team has to be balanced out like that. You need technical experts on it, and you need people that are good at managing incidents and the compliance piece of it, and being able to roll all that in. The real unicorns out there, the ones that come from the trade and can hold no bias and look out for their friend on the line crew that they know messed up but should be held accountable, but not going to do anything because we worked together in the past company. The ones that just straight down there was like, hey, no, you messed up, we got to call it. And there's a few of them out there, but they're in operations mainly, not in the safety capacity to where they're seeing multiple crews. They're working with 4 or 5 or 2 crews. So the balance of it has to come from the operational side, is the production measures, and then also staffing and finding qualified people. It's like if there's a million out there that we can coach and mentor, and we've tried everything possible, and it's costing us more money to coach and mentor them, then we need to call this a bad return of investment and move on to another candidate. And that's the balance that you have to look at. And then also with the utility providers have to look at growing how much money they've invested into them already and how much it will cost to replace them. And that's the world that you have to balance out. Like, what does the cost outweigh the means? But you have to balance it. Like, not everything is termination. Not everything warrants a sledgehammer.
How do you know, I guess, in the recruiting process, right? How can someone tell if someone will be coachable?
So for trades, a lot of it's done by word of mouth. You already know about that person before he enters your organization. It's actually calling the references or calling the past companies and saying, would you hire him again? Asking that simple question right there. If they say yes, no, things like that. And ask the person, like, you know, if you ask somebody, like, if you want to, do you mind sharing me why you left your recent organization? That's usually a common interview question, and they'll dump on it. Like, you know, it's like, well, I didn't feel like I didn't get any support. I feel like they were out to get me. I feel like one way or another, and that's a big thing. Is everybody feels a certain way about it, their perception of it, and so you can kind of tell then. It's like, okay, he's saying it's like felt like he wasn't supported, but then again, it's like, well, who did you tell for support? You can kind of dig into those questions and really dig into it, and then think about your organizational weaknesses that you have already, you know, exist. It's like, do I have those same things? Are you going to feel the same way? I interviewed for a position. They said, well, we don't think you're a good candidate for this job because you're going to face those same things here. And I was like, oh, that's actually a really honest, fair statement. I'm glad they brought it out to the light. And then, honestly, build in your, there's nothing wrong with having that 90-day, 60-day trial period with the employees, like as far as your mentoring, and make that part of your onboarding process. Is like, you know, you have a 30, 60, 90-day review with them and see how they're integrating into your company's culture. I mean, it's been a hard sell for us. We came from a blame the employee type culture to that didn't work, and we see it not working because now we're working with the same people with different logos on our shirts. I was like, how's something that would mean something else? And we didn't actually come up with a lot of this stuff. And, you know, the most common answer is like, well, you need to hire a lineman safety. He knows the trade and stuff. And like, yeah, but he doesn't know how to write the report. That's the issue that we generally come up to. To a lineman, it makes sense, but to someone that's never done the trade, it doesn't. Even to some of the regulatory entities, it won't. OSHA won't always understand the lineman terminology. So we have to like, well, yeah. It's like, honestly, it's like you're teaching us, and we're trying to lower your risk tolerance. So bear with us, and we'll see if we can meet in the middle. And we've had really great success doing that here.
You actually just mentioned the word I was thinking of. When we talked before, you mentioned lowering risk tolerance, and it's also something I see you talk about a lot on LinkedIn. Can you talk in a more elaborate way about what you mean by that?
So a good practice in our industry on zone storm, we have to work between bracket grounds, and that's where you run at minimum of a 2-watt cable from the neutral phase, and then run it up, and then you connect them all with two more, or you have the chicken foot ones that are have one leg that connects to a neutral, and each one connects to a phase. Without getting into the theory and all, everybody's personal feelings towards that one is, it's very common for them to use a live line tool to install those. Whenever they're using mechanical jumpers, when they're doing reconducts, or if they have to do maintenance on a pole or maintenance on a system and they want to keep both sides energized, is they'll use a cable that looks very similar to that and connect it to both sides of the cable that the wire they're working on. and so that they can work in that void in between it. And if they need to shorten, cut, add more wire or whatever, it stays energized the entire time. And a lot of linemen in the past have been really bad about placing those on hand. The difference is when you set the grounds is like you've tested the line. They have to be de-energized. You go up there with the voltage detector, live line tester, or you the biggest thing that I've learned about the utility side, which shocked me a couple of years ago, was the phasing sticks. Is they use phasing sticks to make sure it's at zero potential, and use that, measure it out, and everything's at zero. Okay, let's max this out. With the grounds, or there's no voltage detected or anything else. When they're using mechanical jumpers, they'll use their hands and put it on by hand, and they're insulated and isolated, and it's just like trying to lower that. It's like, well, we just tested the line, it's de-energized. It's like we're going this extra step. I was like, we know this is energized, and you know that's the right phase, but people make mistakes all the time. It's like, well, we not use a live line tool for that to keep us out of that minimum approach distance. Every voltage, the R tables in the 1910, 1926 has the voltages listed out. It's like, well, you should stay this far because you get burned, or it could flash on your all these other things, and like how do we get them to do that? And lowering that risk tolerance and trying to like relate it to them and try to make sense to them. It's like, it's hard. You're defeating generations of bad habits and stuff, and it's even best practice to use live line tools, but you're just like, well, but you try to make it say, well, this is zero energy. It's zero. You just test it. Well, you're always supposed to. Okay. And then you watch them back at the line and be like, why did you do it that way in the same way you put on grounds? Oh, it's the same potential. And we have the jumper across, so it's not going to do anything. I was like, okay. And then they'll remove them the same way. It's like, okay. And you can't like fly off the handle because nothing happened. They're not going to learn. There wasn't a life-changing event. It didn't knock out it didn't trip the circuit out. So they're like, well, nothing happens. We've always done it that way. So it's just like, okay, well, it's like, I know it's a little bit of extra step, but it's like the potential's there, or and I try not to be that safety guy that has that one story that he beats to death. Like, well, I had a friend do this, or I had a friend do that, or, I had a buddy. And sometimes they're not even the safety professional story. It's something that's been regurgitated since they heard someone else say it and they try to claim it as their own. So I just like, well, I get that, but it's like you don't see, it's like just kind of think about it because you don't see anything wrong with that. Well, no. I was like, okay. And then, that's where I get the general foreman with his knowledge because they came up together, they worked together or something like that. So it's like, try to get him. I was like, I don't know how to get through to this one or lower his risk tolerance in doing that. Can you talk to him about this? Because it concerns me because I don't want to meet his family at the hospital. I'd rather us have a barbecue as a company and I get to meet his family. And, it's just, I generally care, and it's like, I don't have to go out there and say, well, that's the wrong way with no context. It's like, no, I need to get a lineman involved because it sounds better coming from him. And that's how you do it. It's like you understand the risk that is associated with it and have somebody that has been there to lower it for him and explain why those things exist now.
Got it. What would you say is one of the principles you learned during the military that enables you to view risk the way you do, and how that has influenced just your thought and your approach to risk management, and even the way you deal with your team when you're trying to train them?
Attack, I don't know if it was military, but definitely inspired by the military. Is some of the books, self-development books, the Extreme Ownership and 7 Habits of Effective People or Effective Leadership, been really instrumental in actually bringing down those things. The military-wise is you're not going to win every battle. I'll always enter a situation with an exit strategy. and then always plan, and then even planning out like how that conversation is going to go, and then foreseeing possible other outcomes of it and how you would react to that, and having a plan to engage each one of those. I never like to approach a crew without knowing like how they, without thinking and sometimes overthinking of how their reaction is going to be to what I'm saying. And the biggest thing is sometimes like whenever you realize you're not effective, it's time to pull back. It's like, I'm going to get trapped. I need to stop. I need to stop this conversation, and I need to leave it, or I need to stop this job because they're building themselves a trap, and they're seeing what they're looking at up in the air, and they're not seeing all the things that are going on the ground. Or I've just walked down the line. They may not know that, there's an emergency going on a mile down the line that is affecting what they're doing, when communicating that, because the crew on the ground down there has gotten caught up in trying to handle that emergency and not sharing any of that information and communication. And the big thing is the over communication is sometimes important, but also knowing when to stop is definitely one of the main principles. Is you can beat a horse to death, and then you can beat a dead horse.
Yeah. Do you read a lot, Tony?
So, as contractor safety, we spend a lot of time in our vehicles. I like to use that to turn it into a classroom and use audiobooks, audibles, podcast, and that's been extremely beneficial. It's like I could listen to music. Sometimes I'm on the phone with using hand-free devices, and I accomplish and work through a lot of things that way. But any time that you have to where you can listen to something or communicate is not wasted time if you're using it effectively. So yeah, that's reading a lot. That's kind of audiobooks is kind of what I utilize a lot more than reading.
Now, what would you say is your favorite book this year?
The 48 Laws of Power have been a really interesting one, eye-opening. To transitioning from more of a field role to corporate has been very beneficial in that that describes the corporate world extremely well. It's like, never outshine your boss. Don't ever do that. That is not a good thing. And then, yeah, it's just simple things. It's like, don't hire your friends, because I've seen that fail in the field level. That's probably been my favorite one this year.
Awesome. What would you say is one key thing that you would want to see changed in the power line and electric industry as it relates to safety?
That's a really hard one. It always comes down to dollar and cents. It's like we measure project completion dollars and cents and units. Even bid projects are broken down the same way to track those dollars and cents. And then also it's like, well, if we need the right tools for the job, the cost of that. And there's certain things to this industry where tooling and stuff is always a major issue. We're looking anywhere from $80,000 to $50,000 to equip a crew with tooling for the job that they have to do. But all that factors into like whenever, if we could just get to that point to where people were genuinely honest and just we didn't have to keep retooling vehicles, retooling the trucks with things that were taken, and we replaced them as needed, and it wasn't a money game all the time with rotating numbers and everything. If we could actually get to a point to where we equipped them like Class A linemen and they were able to do it, and then also develop that time for developing the individuals and not rely heavily on the job training, that would be the one thing. And then yeah, it's just giving our guys the right tools to do the job, and then getting their involvement in with it.
Yeah. I feel like that should be like naturally should be inherent because I feel like it's dollars and cents, but I feel the long game, if you're investing in the right things, in the right tools, and in safety and protecting your people, you're going to win in the long run.
Yeah, 100%. Uh, one of the cool things about leadership that the military does is they have a broad spectrum of it, and some of these isolated groups within organizations, they may only see somebody from management level other than their GF once a quarter or once a year. Is you're exposed to all those levels consistently, so you can see like the guy that shouts to get things done. You can see the guy that really calm and talks to people and tries to coach them. And you can see the guy that coddles too, and see how that works, because that's one of the methods too. Um, I learned to be able to be diverse with all of them. So if the crew responds better to me yelling or something like that, just kind of like break up the ice or something, then you switch that gear. But then you always bring it back. You mix it within that crew so that you can change how you interact with them day to day, especially if you're in the field with them every day. One of the things that we transition to in the management level is like I'm not there to actually do as much with the crew as I am managing situations and program and development of that side of it. So is getting the feedback from the people in the field too that are using the stuff that you think's a good idea. One of the questions I posed to the team yesterday is like, what do you think about digitizing our 5 why root cause analysis form? And it sparked a pretty lengthy conversation with some feelings in it, and I was like, okay. And then I got to thinking about it, and I was like, one of the great things about the way we're doing this stuff is we only have one file, and it's everything that we need is uploaded into that file, so we can reference it no matter where we're at, and we don't have to go search for it here. We have to click on this link, that it takes us to this link, that we have to go back to this link. We put it all in a PDF format, and it's all loaded in one location, directly associated with that event. And I was like, no, we're going to keep it the same way. If it's not super broken and it's still efficient, we still have a working system that meets the needs that we have, that everyone is comfortable working with. And digitizing does not bring it into any other different light. Then let's just keep it that way. And that was one of those ego things. It was like, man, I thought it was a really great idea until I ran it past the team, and I was like, they just like stomped on it like it was a wildfire in the grass. So
Got it. Well, I guess it's with any change, you have to manage that change, and if they're not ready for it, then they're just not going to accept it, and it's not gonna be implemented not in the way that would be beneficial for anyone. So you just have to, go slow, and maybe it's beneficial or would be beneficial, but that's something you'll find out over time when they're ready for it. That's actually when they'll move in that direction.
you have to learn to work different, what is it, change management levels consistently with crews, with organizations, with divisions, all at the same time is one of the safeties that I'm mentoring and stuff. He's like, well, how do I get it to that level? And I was like, I don't know, start off with one thing. It's like, well, what should it be? I was like, well, what's your biggest gripe right now, this very second? He's like, well, I want to be able to see this type of documentation, and I have to drive. We're spread out from New Mexico to other end of the United States, and I was like, well, we can just have them start out with just uploading. Don't pick them apart when they start uploading it. I was like, when you start seeing deficiencies, go there to work directly with them. Don't shotgun blast everybody. Just kind of pull them off to the side and kind of talk to him like you would want to be addressed if I had concerns about your performance in the field. It's a changing generation. You can't just shotgun blast people, and everybody's like, and the people that have been doing really well, like, I don't know why he's talking to me, even though he said it wasn't addressed to everybody, but I did everything I'm right. And that same guy that you want the message to get through, it's like, I don't know why he's talking to me. It's like, there's a task, there's the hazards, here's how we're controlling it. I mean, having that building relationships is like the biggest thing you can do in this industry, and you have to do that and work that change management at different levels at the same time.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting. not an analogy, but that's interesting because I've definitely seen that, where you communicate the same thing. Oh, one person is doing something that's not right. So you tell everyone that oh, this is what I need you guys to do. But then the people that need to hear it are ignoring it, and those that don't need to hear it, well, they're just probably just annoyed by it. But yeah, no, that's actually a pretty good insight. Very good. So you're saying to speak to the person face to face, one on one.
I mean, this is again, see, touch, feel for this industry. These guys, they're amazing. Like the big reason I fell in love with this industry was Hurricane Laura. 833,000 people without power and 500,000 contractors. 36 days later, had circuits back up to 92% reliability. Hurricane Ian, like 2.3 million people without power, and 32 days later, 98% reliability for that circuit. And then, even past events this year is, tirelessly, these guys are working day and night, and they get paid for it, but that doesn't take away, like, the missed holidays, the missed times with kids, missed vacation. The big way that you show somebody that you actually care is, like, I got a call before Father's Day, and my kids were coming to see me, and I had to pump the brakes on. I was like, listen, I'm from doing this a while. I was like, this is probably going to go one of two ways. I was like, I have a bunch of dads on locations right now trying to get tasks completed, and they're getting pushed to do it because there's a time limit whenever this wire has to be done by. Or I can spend the time with the kids and just say, well, I don't get paid to do that. I was like, but if something does happen, my kids will be sitting in a hotel room in the middle of nowhere while I'm out on this job site trying to do an investigation or trying to help support that safety, that member of my team, and getting the information gathered up, or worse, at the hospital trying to get all the other information I need. So it's just like, nope, I think I'll just go ahead and go out there and be where the guys are, because, again, like, the reason my kids are able to come see me for Father's Day is because they provide that opportunity by their skills in doing what they do. So that was time that I won't get back, but that was also a big hurdle, because by the time I left, and it was 2 days of working on this weekend, by the time we finished the goal of getting all this wire done, it's just the relief on the guy's face that, one, it was over, and two, that that they do have somebody out there. They have the manager from safety, even if it is from safety, he's out there, and he's assisting in little things like we try to do watermelon breaks or some type of fruit, or not energy drinks, but hydration packets for their water bottles and stuff, because it's hot. It's not for the faint of heart. And whenever you get to about day 18 of any project, and you've been working them straight 12-hour days all day, you start to lose sight. It's like, oh, I'm working so hard. It's like, I'm not gonna survive this to be able to spend the money. And so that was seeing the relief on their face, and having a couple of, like, the guys that I generally respected in their roles thank me for coming out and actually working with them, or doing weird stuff. Like, I cleaned out one crew's truck just because I was on the ground with them, and I was like, well, I'm not doing anything, I might as well do something useful here. Started bagging up stuff and helping them organize some of the stuff in the belly of the truck. That was like, I told one of the following morning, said, hey, can we get somebody to go ahead and gather this stuff and take it apart and break it down for us, so that when we get there, it's ready to go. We can be way more efficient. And I was like, I got your back. And the foreman says, yeah, he sure will. If you need your truck cleaned out, get him to do that too. He's like, I can find my tools now. And I was like, yeah, that makes me feel pretty good. I mean, that meant a lot to that guy. Like, I wasn't out there to just say what he was doing wrong, but it's like, get his perspective on it, and like, assist in everything. We're service providers of safety. That's why, like, I still love this industry. It's like, these guys just sometimes they just need a helping hand, and like you can be that helping hand. I don't have to do that day in and day out. They do, but me showing up those 2 days, we didn't have any incidents. We completed it on task. We didn't have anything negative about it. Like any we didn't have anything that we prevented. Like, oh my God, this could have been worse. No, it's like we just got the job done. We did it the right way, and we took care of everybody on site. It's the greatest feeling in the world, and we're done with it. Now let's move on to the next challenge. We all grew from it. I learned a lot about that particular division. I was like, okay, and then was able to send up some stuff like, hey, we need to look at doing this and bring some effect change. It's like, yeah, it's like we can organize this, set up an account here so that the safety guy can come pick it up and then bring it out to the guys. So it's just like, that's huge to me. It's stuff that like we even in safety, we get lost in our train of thought on something, and then we forgot why we even got into this trade. Like it's about those guys. I tell everybody all the time, is like sometimes I'll sit there whenever a hurricane or something's blowing in, and even my kids are like, "Your line will be fine, Dad." I was like, "I don't know, like just got guys flying buckets today." And I was like, "I know where they're at on their project," and I was like, "I know they're good, but I just like." I was like, that little twinge is like, what if they're only good when I'm there? And it's like, what if, the what if plays into factor, and I just think about it. And sometimes I'll shoot them a text like, hey man, I appreciate everything you guys are doing. And they're like, hey, thanks, appreciate you thinking about us, man. That's huge. I love that. Like, and I genuinely mean it. This is one of my good mentors. I haven't told him he's my mentor. He's good. We've came up together in this stuff, and I was like, he told me, he's like, Tony, I buy all this stuff out of my own pocket not because I like spending money, but this is a lifestyle. It's not a job. It's a lifestyle, and you won't ever know it because you have to live it. And I was like, no, but hopefully you guys can get me as close. He's like, we're doing what we can. We got hope for you, but sometimes. So that makes me feel good that there's still hope. Some of these linemen still have hope in my abilities to make it better for them.
I love that. You know what I get from you? You're definitely extremely passionate about the industry and about what you do. And I'm in a hurricane state. I'm in Florida, so I definitely appreciate you guys
I've been
and all that
there
you do.
every year for the past 3.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, Tony, it was a pleasure talking with you today. Is there anything that you wanted to leave the audience with?
Don't ever don't ever be afraid to try to innovate and try to something new. Just because it's not what you've been doing doesn't mean it won't work. But give it a shot, and if it fails, it fails. But now we know for sure. We've had great success here, and I'd love to talk on the leadership that I've gotten to work with, that they've helped change this organization's culture, and it makes it really easy to be a part of in that aspect. Even down to the crews, even the crews that that disagree with me on things, is like, no, I need that experience of why you don't like what I'm saying or how I'm saying it, because that's only going to grow me as a professional in this industry. It's never about what I know. It's whatever I can impress upon you to lower that risk tolerance to get you to do the right thing. Let's do this the right way. And if I can get them through today, we'll get them through tomorrow. And that's a big thing, is don't stop pushing on that needle. Cross arms don't get tweaked out overnight. It happens over time.
I love that. I love that. And yeah, never be afraid to innovate. They say if you're actually just standing still, in a way you're not really standing still, you're kind of going backwards because things are always moving forward. So you gotta keep trying new things. And the only thing that doesn't work is if you don't try something. So yeah. Awesome. Well, Tony, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, I know I capitalized a lot on talking, but thank you for having me. And I would encourage you to reach out to Mike RL, and then he could elaborate more from his perspective at the executive level, and then Another really good mentor to me and a good friend is Mel McBride. She's been the VP of our HR here and has assisted us tremendously on just like that piece of it. Um, a lot of your support elements have to work together and intertwined, and it's not like any one of us making it better. We're all working behind the scenes, and the guys don't need to see that struggle from us, and we can't bring it out to the light because it
Right.
takes away from them doing that. It's like, no, we'll take whatever wave that you need to throw at us to be that rock that crashes upon. We'll do it.
Awesome. All right. Thanks so much, Tony. All right, guys, that's it for another episode of the Construction CPA Podcast, and we'll join you again next time.